Um, all right, so I guess we'll start with our beginner basics. So today we're going to learn how to move the rooks, and we're also going to learn how to move the king and how to castle. So I'm going to finally um, bring in the king, and after I show you how these pieces move, we'll play a game where it'll just be the rooks, and we'll actually have the two kings. So I'll play white and you guys will play black. It's been quite a hit the last couple of weeks, so hopefully you guys will enjoy it this week. So rooks are long range pieces, and last week we learned about the bishops. The bishops move on diagonals, while the rooks only move in straight lines. So the rook can move all the way down the board if it wants. It could also move halfway. It could move just one square. And it can also move left and right. So these two rooks, these are some possible moves for those guys. The king, on the other hand, the king is, early on in the game, is a fairly weak piece because the king can only move one square in any direction. So right here, the king can go left, can go right, can go straight, can go diagonally left, and finally diagonally right. So the king is kind of a slow mover. However, once we get into the end game, which the end game is when there's not as many pieces on the board, the king actually plays a very important role, defending pawns and attacking. So the king is kind of like a late bloomer. You want to look at it that way. Now there's a special rule in chess. It's called castling. And the idea is that you don't want to leave your king in the middle of the board because your opponent's pieces typically are in the middle of the board and will come after your king. So typically we want to put our king to one of the sides, okay? And there's a special move in chess called castling, and we can do it. Okay, so for some reason it's not going to allow me to do that move. Okay, that's unfortunate. Let's see here. Why aren't you? Okay. That a boy! Hello, that a boy. Well, we will eventually get to endgame lessons. Not today, though. We are learning how to move the rooks today. Okay, so anyway, it's unfortunate chess.com's not letting me make that move, but the castling move, we can move our king 2 squares, and then the rook comes over on this square. And if we do it on the queen side, the king moves 2 squares, and the rook comes right next to it. And so the result is that our king is away from the center of the board and closer to the corner. So with all the pieces on the board, the king tends to be safer in the corners. That's the idea. Okay, guys, so let's do what we did last week, the last couple of weeks, where I will play white and you guys can play black. Now we've got our rooks on the board. So let's try to use our new pieces, and we should be able to use our castling move. So maybe I can show you guys the castling move here. Let's see if it'll let me. Of course it won't. Why is that? Hold on here. I think there might be... let me go back. Let me try to set this up again. I wonder if it'll let me set the board up again. Just a sec, guys. So I didn't change that. Why didn't it allow that? Okay, I'm just going to try something. Okay, so if we were to go there... Interesting. Okay, I must have changed something. Hello, Demelch. How are you? Welcome to the stream. Okay. So there we go, and we're going to load. Beautiful. Okay. So will it let me castle here? Hey, well, so that is the castling move, guys. So you'll notice, like I said, the king moves over twice, and the rook moves right beside it. And you'll see the result of that is that he's closer to the corner. Now we can also do that on the queen side. You move 2 squares over, and the rook follows suit. So the only thing you got to remember is that it's 2 squares over, guys. So 2 squares over either that way, king side, or this way, queen side. All right. So let's play. Hello, Ash Bryce. Happy New Year. Good to see you. So let's play. You guys will tell me what piece you guys want to move and try to beat me. And because we have the kings on the board, let's... last week our goal was just to get a pawn to the other side of the board. That was the winner and loser. That's how that was determined last week. But this week, because we do have the kings on the board, let's see if one side can checkmate the other side. So I'm going to move my pawn up too. Where would you guys like to move here? So vote in the chat. And we're all here to learn, guys, so there's no wrong answers. So please do participate. So which piece would you guys like to move? I'll go with the consensus. Once you guys make a decision, I'll go with the consensus move. So do you guys want to move a pawn? Do you guys want to move a king? Or do you guys want to move one of your rooks? So you guys are playing the black pieces. Okay. Mr. Man-Child is saying pawn up twice. Captain Stark. Hello, Captain Stark. Welcome to the stream. So that's one option. We've got 2 votes for castling. Now, are you saying castling king side or castling queen side? You've got the option. So which side of the board, guys? Which? No, you missed how to move the pieces. We learned how to move the rooks and the king. Okay, good. You do know how to move. Awesome. All right, guys. So that a boy says long castle. So that whenever we say long castle, that means queen side. So we have 1 vote for long castle. So you guys are playing black. So maybe I'll flip the board, guys, so that you know. Just 1 second here, guys. Okay, would that make it easier, guys? Let's do it like that. So hopefully that's easier for you guys. So we've got 1 vote for castling king side. We've got another vote for castling queen side. And we have h5. So all 3 moves are fine. You guys could go with either one. So I think I'm just going to have to pick eeny, meeny, miny, mo. I'm going to choose one of the castling options, and I'm going to say queenside for you guys. All right. Now, I am going to move my other pawn up. So what are you guys going to do now? Also, guys, if you missed the last 2 weeks, you can see the reruns on my YouTube channel. I also have some other instructional videos on there too, like game reviews. But you can see the last 2 weeks we learned how to move the pawns, and last week we learned how to move the bishops. Okay, so we've got a vote for D5. We have a vote for D6. And we have a vote for E6. The attaboy says, let's go D6, followed by E5. So we get an open file. Okay. Are you guaranteed to get an open file that way? No, you're not. Why is that, Captain Stark? Ah, because I could push forward. That's right. So I could just push the pawn forward. That doesn't mean D6 and E5 is a bad move. I'm just making you aware that I'm not forced to take. You're right, though. If I do take, then you guys would get an open file. So let me ask you guys, are open files better for rooks, or should rooks sit behind pawns? Rooks are long-range pieces, so should we have an open file? Yeah, of course they should have open files. So you're right, Captain Stark. So that's why you guys want to open up the D file, because then this guy is more effective. Okay, so we've got D6 and D5. Let's go with Captain Stark's decision this time. So D5. And you know what? I like an open file too. So I'm going to take your guys' pawn. So I'm assuming you guys want to take the pawn back. Of course. All right. So now it's up to me. You guys are attacking my D pawn. Boo! Boo! Boo earns. Okay. I will do like you guys and castle queenside. What do you guys want to do now? Minith, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. So Captain Sark wants to play F6. Don't tell Ben Feingold. Don't tell Ben Feingold you want to play F6. Okay, we've got two votes for Rook H to D8. So you guys want to double up? All right, that makes sense. You guys are going to double up. Very good. So now you guys are attacking my D pawn twice. I have to defend it. So this is the only other way for me to defend it. So I'm defending it twice. You guys are attacking it twice. All right. Now what do you guys want to do? F6, says Captain Star. So we have one vote for F6. Another vote for E5. So what do you not like about E5, Captain Stark? We lose a pawn if we move E5. Okay. Let's take a look at that. So what happens on E5? So I could take... Then what could you guys play? Can you guys take the pawn back? Mr. Manchild says we could trade off rooks, yes. So what happens if you guys trade off all the rooks? I still have my pawn on E5, right? So I would still have my pawn on E5, and it's not so clear whether you guys are going to take it, you're going to be able to win it. So after E5, you shouldn't play rook takes rook. What other move could you guys play? So E5, pawn takes pawn. What could you play after pawn takes pawn? You're not forced to take my rook. Is there another move you guys could play? Mr. Manchild, you got it. Of course, you guys could just take the pawn with the rook. Hello, Ramiro. Good to see you again. Happy New Year. And then if I took you guys, you would take me. Right? Okay. So, do you guys want to play E5? Or do you guys want to play F6 first and then play E5? Hey, Ramiro has subscribed. Thank you, Ramiro, for 2 months. I really appreciate that. You're the best, Ramiro. So we have 2 votes for F6. And that a boy, I believe, is voting for E5. So any other votes? Mr. Manchild says E6. Okay. So that's just going up 1. Okay, guys, I'll be right back. Something's just come up, so you guys, let me see here. There was 2 votes for F6, so let's go with F6. I'll make a move, and then you guys vote in the chat on what you're going to do. So I'm going to play F4. So I'll be right back, guys. Okay, guys. Sorry about that. Just had something outside to attend to. So I'm back. I'm huffing and puffing, but hey, I'm back. Victor the Mad King and SNP CLN. Thank you for the follow, guys. So we've got 2. I don't know what my dog said, but We're not going to go with her move. So we've got 2 votes for h6 and 1 for e6, and we've got another one for e5. So what's the Captain Stark? What's your idea behind h6? Why do you want to play h6? What's the idea behind h6, guys? Okay, h6, h4. Question for you. Does white have to play h4? Tommy17, thank you for the follow. Yeah, I'm not forced to play h4. However, if I do play it, you're looking at rook e8, c4, rook d8. I think you want to keep your 2 rooks on the same file because they give rooks work best on the same file. And so by moving this guy away, you're actually relieving some pressure on my d4 pawn. So if it was my move and I played c4, you guys would just take my pawn. Right? So the minute you play rook e8, you're allowing me to play c4 because you've only got one attacker on the d4 pawn now. So I wouldn't be so quick to be playing rook to e8. Let's see. SNP says e5. So let's look at e5. e5. Let's see, takes, takes, takes. And then you guys would take the pawn back. What do you guys think about that? Looks good, says Captain Stark. Okay. Your rook would be in the middle. Be nothing wrong with the rook in the middle. It does simplify the position, yes. All right, what do you guys think about e5? You guys want to play e5 now? Or do we still need to consider other options? Captain Stark says e5. Okay, guys. Let's try your e5. I'm going to take your pawn. I took it this way, a different way. So I'm assuming you guys want to take the pawn, or do you want to take my rook? Hey, WT Walden. Thank you for the raid. Thank you, WT Walden. Welcome, everybody. We are doing some beginner basics. Pawn takes on e5. Yeah, that makes sense. So we got consensus on that. All right, I'm going to move my pawn up. I'm tricky. I'm tricky. WT Walton, thank you for the follow. All right, guys, what do you guys want to do now? Ramiro says E4. So E4 would move your guys' pawn ahead. And you would also be attacking my F pawn. SNP says either G6, trying to trade off the pawn, or E4. So we got 2 votes for E4. Mr. Manchild says, do not move G6. Ramiro says, G6 is just allowing a passed pawn. Correct. So that might be a dangerous pawn. Captain Stark says H5. Okay, I think we got enough votes for E4, guys, so we're going to go with your guys' E4. So I am going to trade a rook. I'm assuming you guys want to trade the rook back, so I will not even bother wasting time on that one. And now I'm going to play G4. SNP says, push that pawn. Push that pawn. Push that pawn. Ramiro says, push that pawn. Mr. Manchild says, hold on. Put the rook behind the pawn before we push. Yeah, it's generally a good idea to have your rook behind a passed pawn. Hey guys, why is this called a passed pawn, by the way? Well, the reason why it's called a passed pawn is that there aren't any pawns that could take it. This pawn has already gone past, and I don't have a D pawn. So this guy will never be taken by another pawn. DH Roz, welcome. Evie Love says, because it's going to get captured, pass away. Ha ha ha. Evie Love with the trolling. All right, so we got quite a few votes for E3. So let's go with E3. All right. Little Seb from Goodwill Gang. Hello. Thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so I'm going to attack your guys' pawn. Rawr, I'm coming after your pawn, guys. Rook E5. So DH Roth says this is the Italian game. So the opening that we played here in this custom game is called the Italian game, according to DH Roz. Ramiro says Rook D3. Everybody else says Rook E5. Well, unfortunately, Ramiro, I'm going to have to go with Rook E5 because there's a slight problem with Rook D3. What's the problem with Rook D3? Or is there a problem? Maybe there isn't. Maybe Ramiro sees something a little deeper. So king c2, that would attack your guys' rook. So how would you deal with that? What would you guys play after rook? Sorry, king c2. What would you guys play? Ramiro says rook d2. Okay, rook d2. That would be putting my king into check, and you guys would be hitting the h-pawn. Okay. So I would play something like king to b3. Then what would you guys play? e2, says Ramiro. Okay. So after looking at that a little further, do you guys want to still go rook e5, or do you guys want to go rook d3? Those are the two options. Which is the better one, guys? Caleb Fields. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for the follow. So, Captain Sarek, I think you mean d3. So Ramiro wants to play rook d3. Captain Stark wants to play rook d3. Anybody else want to play rook d3? Or do we want to go back with rook e5? Put your vote in the chat, guys. SNP says, I would play rook e5 and then move king towards queen side. Well, the king is already on the queen side. You must mean the center. You must mean the center, do you? AGL2 is best. Thank you for the follow. All right, so we've got enough that are looking at rook d3. I think rook d3 is the more interesting option. So I am going to... let's see, what am I going to play? All right. I'll oblige. We'll play king c2. So rook d2. All right, you guys are pretty definite on rook d2. That's a check. All righty. Now I will play king back. Now what do you guys want to do? AGL 20, okay. We will come back to that position. I think you're right. There were a couple of options I could have played. SNP wants to play e2. How come you guys should not play e2? What's the problem with e2? What's the problem with e2, guys? Captain Stark says loses the rook. Yeah, so if you move the pawn up, then the rook is no longer protected. So you don't want to do that one. All right, so what are some options here? What do you guys want to try? Demelch. Demelch says rook takes. Rook takes what? Rook takes b2? Is that what you want to do? Ramiro says no. You want to play rook takes h2. We'll take the H pawn. Okay. Anybody else want to play rook takes H2? Tommy says, let's play rook G2. Tommy says, let's go after the G pawn. So Tommy is voting for rook G2. We've got rook G2 and rook takes H2 as options. Captain Stark. Captain Stark says rook G2. We have 2 votes for rook G2, 1 vote for rook takes H2. Acorn 4000, Acom 4000. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the follow. Ramiro has now changed his vote. He says that's actually an interesting move. I'm going to vote that way too. SNP says rook G2. And white will just play H3. So if white just plays H3 there, how are you guys going to deal with that? That's a good question or a good point by SNP. What do you guys do after H3? E2 says Captain Stark. Captain Stark wants to push. Ramiro says, I'm going to change my mind again. SNP says, well, you can still play E2 after rook takes H2. So, rook takes here. I'm likely going to take your guys' pawn. So it would be equal pawns. Demelch then says we could go rook G2 behind the G pawn. Ah, I was wondering if you guys were going to pick that up. Tommy says, well, wait a minute now. We go rook G2, and white plays H3. We play rook G3. And rook G3 not only attacks the H3 pawn, it protects the pawn on E3. Aha! Interesting stuff. All right. So, rook takes H2 or rook G2? Let's have a final vote. Hey, Caleb Fields! Awesome. Thank you, Caleb Fields. Really appreciate the sub. You rock. Thank you very much. Be sure to join my Discord. We've got a subs channel. And we had some snow last night. If you guys want to see how much snow we got, you can see that. I posted a picture on my Discord. Okay, you guys are all pretty set on rook G2. Okay. So now I have to make a decision. If I take your guys' pawn, then you guys will take my pawn. And then I will have 2 isolated pawns. I don't think I want to do that. So I am going to play H3. Rawr! H3. Captain Stark says rook G3. Okay, you guys are pretty set on that. Rook G3. Fair enough. I'll play King C2. Rook takes pawn. You guys want to take the H pawn? Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Alrighty, here I come. So now what do you guys want to do? Captain Stark says, let's bring our king up. SNP says, no, 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 let's play Rook G3. Let's go after the G pawn. You guys have those two options. The Melch says, you know what? We can't save the E pawn, so let's go after the G pawn. All right. Let's play Rook G3 then. You guys seem to be liking that move. Okay. I will take that E pawn. You guys just want to take the G pawn? Okay. Makes sense. You guys are winning a pawn. Ooh, tricky. Tricky, tricky. So SNP says takes. The Melch says you got to take, man. Tommy says H5. All right, so we got 3 for takes, and Tommy says H5. Okay, boomer. Pawn takes. Yeah. All right, so you guys are going to take. Fair enough. Yeah, good point, Demelch. So let's go back there. If you guys played H5, then how do you defend F7 and F8? Because keep in mind, after H5, F7, if you go behind my pawn, it looks like you're going to win my pawn. But I have a very important check. Check. King comes up, and then I'm promoting. So I think you guys played the right move, taking my pawn. Alrighty. Now what do you guys want to do? H5. H5 now. Okay. Well, you guys are pretty darn sure about that one, so H5. Alrighty. Now what? Rook G3, Rook G6, Rook F4, Rook G6. All right. We got lots of options here. So we've got 2 for Rook F4. We've got 2 for Rook G6. And now SNP, just to make it interesting, says, how about Rook G3? So those are the 3 options that you guys are considering. Ash Bryce says Rook G6. Ah, SNP actually meant G6. Okay, so we've got a lot. Ah, SNP says you want to get behind the pawn. Very good. Very good. So it looks like there's enough people that are saying Rook G6. But we do have two people that are looking at Rook F4. So let's have a look at Rook G6. What do you guys do if I get behind the pawn first? So how do you guys deal with that? Rook G5, okay. Then I'll play Rook H6. Attack your F pawn. What do you guys want to do then? F5, that makes sense. But then I'm going to come over here. King E3, King F4. And I'll win one of those pawns. However, can you guys benefit from me moving my king over there? How could you guys benefit from me bringing my king over to that side of the board? What's the downside for me for bringing my king all the way over there? Your pawns are weak. Okay. Which pawns, Demelch? Which pawns? Ah, the king protects pawns. Very good. SPM. Thank you, SPM, for the follow. Welcome. So if these guys are vulnerable, how can you guys take advantage of that? What would you guys play after I brought my king over? Yeah, of course. You guys would just attack it. Rook G2. Of course. So it looks like Rook G6 is okay. So let's see what happens on Rook G6, guys. So let's go Rook H7. You guys want to play Rook G5? Yeah, Rook G5. Let's see here. Do I want to play Rook H6 or Rook F7? Does it matter? Yeah, it probably doesn't matter all that much. Okay, Rook H6. You guys gonna play F5? F5 is what you guys looked at, okay. F5, yeah. All right, I'll play B4. F4, says Demelch. Ramiro says F4. SNP says F4. Okay, you guys are pretty hell-bent on F4. All right, here I go. Coming after your pawn. What do you guys think? C5 says Captain Stark. Rook G2 says Demelch. Let's go after those pawns. Mr. Manchild says now we push kingside pawns. Da 3N, welcome. Thanks for the follow. Rook G3, actual wet napkin. That's a nice username. Very original. Thanks for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Rook G3, let's attack this one, says ACOM. So you've got Rook G3, you've also got Rook G2 as an idea. So which one do you guys like? Da3N says B6, then C5. So I think your guys' strategy is to sacrifice these two pawns, but then try to win these guys. I don't think you want to trade these guys, because these are the 3 pawns you're going to need to win. So what do you guys think? Rook G3 or Rook G2? Which one do you guys want to do? You guys think about that. I'm just going to run to the washroom real quick. Okay, so you guys like Rook G3? Alrighty. So I'm going to take. You guys are going to take. I'm going to take. Now, what are you guys going to play? Rook A3. Ah, very nice. Rook C4. Rook C4 puts me in check. And then you guys can take the pawn. That's right. ACOM and that a boy. You both had it. Very nice. So here, and then you guys take the pawn. Okay, now what? Rook A4. Rook H2. Now what do you guys do? Rook A3, C5, B5. Yeah, I think you guys want to get your pawns rolling. C5. Okay, C5. All right. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up right there. So I'm down 2 pawns. I try to keep the beginner basics to an hour, and I do have to attend to something, so I do apologize for not finishing this endgame. But you guys are up 2 pawns. You guys have the right plan. You're going to move, you want to move your pawns up, but you also want to bring your king too. And once you get your 3 pawns up here, you could trade 1 pawn for this guy. The fact that you're up 2 pawns, you're gonna be able to win that by making a queen. Okay, guys, so I will be back in about 10-15 minutes. So nice job.